Before we get into that, though, I just want to share a little bit of information about our webcast series and our community for those of you who may be new. We do this, or try to do this, twice a month on the first and third Wednesdays of the month. If we have things that mess up our schedule, sometimes we move things around. In fact, this month was an example of that. With the Independence Day holiday, we had to shift around our schedule a bit, but I think we're getting back on track in August with the first and third Wednesdays of August. Our goals with this webcast series is to give you information about civil product features for primarily InfraWorks 360 and Civil 3D, but there may be other products that fit into the mix. For example, in our last webcast, we talked a lot about AVT, Autodesk Vehicle Tracking. So, whatever fits the topic of the day, we're going to talk about. It's a chance for you to ask questions and provide feedback, and I'll get into a little more detail about how that works a bit later. And then it ultimately is a chance to bring the civil product users, you guys, and the makers of the software closer together so that you can really get a good idea what's on our minds as we're developing the software, and we can get an idea what's on your minds as you're utilizing the features that we're putting out there. I want to let you all know about our next webcast, which is coming up on the first Wednesday of August, August 3rd. That'll be from 12 to 1, and it's going to be about style customization. This is a topic that has been very much in demand. So you want to know how to do certain specific things in InfraWorks 360 and Civil 3D by manipulating styles. And Heiko and Tim will be back again for our next one, are going to be talking about style customization in both of our I'll call them flagship civil products. Information will be forthcoming on the community site, the forum, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. If you've attended a webcast previously, including today, you'll also be on our mailing list, so you'll receive information on how to register for that webcast sometime in the near future. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Not so new anymore, but I've been keeping this slide in here for those of you who maybe haven't joined us for a few months. You may be puzzled that we're talking about Civil 3D and InfraWorks 360 in the same webcast, and that's all part of the plan. We realized that there was a lot of overlap between what our InfraWorks 360 users wanted to see and what our Civil 3D users wanted to see, as well as a lot of overlap and interplay between the two products. So a lot of times what we were talking about in one product had a very relevant effect on the other. So why not talk about them together? And that's what we're doing. And in fact, today is an example of that as well. We're going to be talking about collaboration techniques that exclude the cloud in today's webcast for both products. I want to do a quick poll, actually two of them. So the first one is we're interested in knowing what your current usage level of InfraWorks 360 is. So if you wouldn't mind, those of you who are frequent flyers on our webcast series have answered this question many times. We're really trying to establish a trend here to see how we're trending with InfraWorks 360 usage. So we've been gathering this data with each webcast since last April. So we've got a pretty good running tabulation going here. Did notice that since we combined and broadened the scope of the webcast, we kind of saw things shift back a little bit up into the I've installed it or I've dabbled on it realm a bit more, and that makes a lot of sense because if we're rolling in hardcore Civil 3D users, we would expect more along those lines. So since then, though, we've continued to trend toward regular usage, and that number at the bottom is really making me happy because that climbs every time we have a webcast. The one that says we're using it on every project, that's up to 11% this time around. The winner with 29% is I regularly use it on some projects. So thanks to all who voted. I'm going to close that poll and open up another one. We're interested in what version of InfraWorks 360 you're using, if you're using it. The licensed full version with all capability, the one that's included with the suites, the LT version. Are you on a trial? Haven't you installed it yet at all? Or maybe you don't know. So if you wouldn't mind providing your answers there, that would be greatly appreciated. And a very clear winner is the licensed full version, which is running in at about 76% right now. 8% haven't installed it yet, 5% are on a 30-day trial, 2% aren't sure what they have. So thanks again for all who voted. This information is interesting for you guys, but it's also very helpful to us as well. So let's move on and just talk a little bit about the community. We've got our InfraWorks 360 community page, which we're going to be slowly evolving into a civil infrastructure community page. So keep your eyes open for that. Right now we're pretty focused on InfraWorks, but we're going to be adding other products, and we're going to be rebranding and renaming this page to the civil infrastructure community page. But even with that change, you're going to have access. It's kind of a hub where you can access a lot of different community features that are important to you, like the user forum where you can ask questions of other users, or actually our product teams are all very active on the forums answering questions, providing insight. We've also got our idea station where you can post things that you'd like to see in the software and get generate support from the community so that your ideas are more prominent and more visible to the product team. Infra tips are quick tips, 30-second, a lot of times videos that show you how to do a cool thing in InfraWorks. We've got our gallery where folks post projects that they're working on, and by the way, we're going to broaden the gallery to include not just InfraWorks but all civil infrastructure products very soon. Social Hub, which is kind of a one-stop shop for all the Facebook and Twitter and blog posts that are going on currently. Of course, all of our videos, especially the ones pertaining to this webcast series, you'll find here on the community site. Information about upcoming webcasts, and as I mentioned, webcast recording. So lots of good stuff on the community site. Definitely want to bookmark that page. I always throw this slide out. I don't know if we have any preview features that we're going to be discussing today. I don't think so, but in case we do, or in case a question takes us down that road, we just want to make sure everyone's clear that any preview feature or labs feature is not any promise of future development of the product, and that basically don't count on it until you actually see it in the product from a legal standpoint. Don't make any purchasing decisions based on preview or labs features. We want to invite you and encourage you to ask lots of questions. Unfortunately, because of the size of our group, we can't open the phone lines. It would just be pandemonium, but we do have a questions window in the GoToWebinar interface. We encourage you to use it. I'll be standing by to answer those questions. So will Tim, so will Nate, and we really welcome your questions because they make the presentations that much more interesting and engaging. Some of the questions we'll just go ahead and answer right in the questions window. Some we'll go ahead and say out loud if maybe there's a recurring theme or an especially interesting question. We'll jump in and interrupt whoever happens to be presenting at the time and get those questions out there. So with that, I'm going to actually, in lieu of Nate actually presenting his part live, it turns out that Nate is in Austria and he's got a somewhat shaky internet connection. So like a good diligent engineer type, he had a backup plan and he provided me with a video, and I'm actually going to play that video. Nate's going to be in the background looking for questions, but I'm going to share that video with you guys. And please holler at me if there's an issue like you can't hear the sound or something like that, because this will be the first time trying this part of the interface for me. So I'm going to do that now. So you're going to see your screen, some things change around with your screen in the next few seconds.
Hi, my name is Nathan Moore, and I'm a Premium Support Specialist. I'm in the Premium Support organization here at Autodesk, and I'm going to show you a bit today about collaborating within InfraWorks 360, but without using the cloud. Now, as a caveat, from what I've seen, definitely feel that you get the best experience by using the cloud, but if you have some restrictions, whether it be bandwidth, technology, security, whatever it may be, that keep you from using the cloud features, it's absolutely possible, and you'll find that you're really not missing out on too much. So to start the process off, as you would start by building any other model, you go to the new option here on the home screen, and it takes it just a minute to come up. But what you'll see as we get going is that ultimately it's the same kind of a file structure. So you have a .SQLite file and a .files folder, both with the same prefix, and those two in combination are the two pieces that contain your InfraWorks model on your local machine. Now I'm saying local. It could be a network drive. It doesn't really matter. Anything that is a mapped drive. So for example, I'm not going to actually let this go all the way through. We'd call it no cloud. Change from Autodesk 360 to my computer. And then from here, you see you can put it on any locally accessible drive, let's say. So whether it's your X drive, that's the server in your office, or some remote machine that you save to, it doesn't matter. As long as you've got it mapped, you and your coworkers could all connect to the same file one at a time, as long as it's accessible from your machine. And you see here we have all the other options that you would have normally for an InfraWorks model, cloud or not. So in this case, I'm not going to create this because it takes a few minutes. I'm going to cancel it. And instead, we'll work from this model here on my home screen. And you can see this one has a little house icon. And if we hover over that, it's a local model. You can see it's in F-test, just as if a cloud model, just as if the model would have been if we created it in the previous screen. And if we look here on this cloud model, it points back to the cloud cache location. So it's easy to tell at a glance if these have been synchronized to the cloud or not. But let's go ahead and open this one. And this particular model is completely local. So if we, for example, look here in the data connections at these files, these are on my D drive. This is Massachusetts data. I built it all with MassGIS files. And you can see this is a local shape file, and we would see the same for this terrain file. And looking in the model itself, we have tooltips, all the same things that we would get whether it was a cloud model or not. This is all exactly the same here. Now, one thing to consider as you go through this process of creating a model is how you're creating it and where your data is being processed. You'll note that for most of these file types, we look there, there's the Civil 3D information. So I'm in InfraWorks 2017, and if you want to import a Civil 3D drawing locally, then you need to have Civil 3D 2017 installed. Now for some of these other file types, like say Revit, you'll see that requires Navisworks. So these are using the engines of those other tools in order to do the import. InfraWorks doesn't actually have everything contained locally. It depends on the other softwares to do some of the heavy lifting. Now there are a few file types, like the DWG in a 2D overlay and CityGML, that require it be done in the cloud. However, that just pushes the data up to the cloud. Engine in the cloud does the work, and then it gets pulled back down. It doesn't actually stay there. However, depending on what your rules are for your organization, that may or may not be an option. Now, when we look at other data sources, these all get done locally, unless, of course, the data is in the cloud on your side. But if you have a local Oracle server, any of those, that's local. Bing, by definition, is in the cloud, but we also have all of these generic connections, and these are all locally done. So you really have a lot of local import options. Now, back here, if you notice on your machine that, for example, this is currently set with the little cloud icon, just go into your application options, and you can change that in data import. Just check these boxes, hit OK, close InfraWorks, reopen it, and after that, all of those imports will happen locally, provided you have either Navisworks and or Civil installed. So that's sort of getting the model set up. As you can see, it's pretty straightforward, and you're able to get all the different bits and pieces that you might need in there. Now, I mentioned earlier that this was a local file, and that by being a local file, we had some restrictions. Now, one of those restrictions is that as a local file, it's single user. So as long as we have this network drive MA file open, that's our current InfraWorks model here, we're going to have that lock file, so no other users can access it. And this applies whether it's on a local or a network drive. So one thing that's a little bit different about InfraWorks is that to release it, it's not as simple as just going back home. Now, when you're in the home screen here at a glance, it looks like you shouldn't have this active anymore. But thanks to this handy feature, which is really nice, it's actually keeping everything for this particular model in memory. So you've got two options to completely get out of this file. You can either close InfraWorks, or you could open another model. We could open this one, and that would close the network drive file, release the log file, and then another user could access it. So just keep that in mind as you're working. If other users are complaining they can't access it, maybe you actually do still have it open and don't realize it. And there's no feedback in terms of who has it open. You just have to make sure that if somebody can't get in, you've got to get someone else to clear it out, to log out and thus clear the log file. Now, some of this data is contained outside that same file. If we go into the application options, look here, and we have two separate files here. So the cache location for cloud models only applies to cloud models. If we look, that's F cloud model cache, which I have open here. And let me quick refresh that just to be sure. Yep. Now if we open this up, it's this Oakland model that you can see in the lower left side here. And we don't have the network drive file because it's not in the cloud. So it's not even touching the cloud model cache. Now the other folder that's referenced here is the cache location for the surface tiles. And that one, if we go to the app data, we will see it. Now that's in app data, local, Autodesk, InfraWorks, and then here it is in the cache. And you can see here, there we are. So if we open that up, it's not terribly big. And one thing that I have seen some users do is put this on a cloud location. The theory being that if everybody points to the same cache, that then it would be a little bit faster for each individual user. Yes, it is maybe a little bit faster, but you're also putting more data in a shared location where space is often at a premium. And more often than not, if you're going to have any errors, what I've seen is that they're in the cache. And I think if there's any chance to reduce the sharing of errors, it's better not to do it. So I personally, I would not put would not put this cache location for the tiles on a shared location. Generally, for a reasonably sized model, it only takes a moment to generate those tiles locally, and you're going to have better performance, and you won't be sharing any errors. So I recommend going that route. Now, what's interesting is at this point, we've got a model that we can collaborate with from a shared location, whether it's network drive or a shared local drive. You could also post this to the cloud if you wanted. All it takes is hitting the synchronize option here, and you would then have the option to post it to an InfraWorks 360 group. So in this case, I could put it in, say, my demonstration group and post it right up there. Now, what would the advantage of that be? Well, by posting it to the cloud, and this is definitely a cloud option, and it's only doable this one way. It sits on Autodesk and Amazon drives, pure cloud if you do that. But you still have the local file. So we have some users that actually will synchronize to the cloud, keep an option on a network drive, and then they get both sides by having one designated user who sort of maintains a master copy. They are able to get all the benefits of having even hundreds of users in the cloud, and all of those users are always current every time they synchronize. And now when that master user synchronizes, they are able to both pull down all the data from the cloud and keep that copy intact by keeping their local, that's local in quotes, copy on a shared drive that's under the corporate backup scheme. That's getting backed up to some other source. So you're able to leverage both pieces of that. You can put your SQLite and your .files folder on a shared drive that's under a regular backup scheme, and you'll always have that to go back to. Maybe that's a daily backup. then if something happens, because it is possible for corruption to take place, you've got that as a backup copy, your daily backup there. Now, then you need basically just one person to be doing that, but that's okay. If you can have one person who's already in the project, at the end of every day they do a synchronization, it can actually work quite nicely. Then you have the true cloud collaboration option, and then you've got the local option with the corporate backup. One other thing to think about, if you do put it into the cloud, there's no versioning, and the last edit to a feature in wins. So if two people should happen to update the same road, for example, the last edit that is made would be the one that becomes the edit of record. So you do need to know what everybody's role is and where their task is within the model. Now, in general, there's some other features that are nice collaboration enhancement features that can be used within a model, whether it's in the cloud or being done locally. So you can see here I have two proposals. If we wanted to add a new proposal, we could call it option 2. And what would happen is this option 2, let me just hit OK, contains all the data, everything that's in the option 1 proposal, and will be visible to anybody else that uses this model. So now in option 2 we can add, modify, delete anything we might want to this, and it doesn't make any difference to the content that's in option 1. So you could use this for different routing options, different scenarios. For construction, you could use it as different snapshots in time. There's a lot of different ways you can use these different proposals. And we also have the scenarios that become visible through to users as well. So with scenarios, you can add a scenario for a particular area of interest. Maybe this would be an area where you want a particular team to focus their work. Maybe this will be an area of particular interest for some constituent group. And these also will synchronize to anybody who opens up this model after this user is finished with it. So these are both ways that you can help groups refine how to work and where to work. And this doesn't touch the cloud. One option you don't get out of this if you're not using the cloud is the design feed, which is a way to leave comments even with locations. And that can be a really nice option. So that's something to think about whether you might want that option. But those are the main ways that you're able to benefit from collaboration without pushing stuff up into the cloud. So despite the 360 in the name, remember that you have a lot of options within InfraWorks that never touch the cloud. In terms of actually either using the cloud as an engine or consuming cloud credits, it's really just the synchronization and the real cloud collaboration that you've seen, which is a great benefit, and a handful of other features that touch the cloud. Without the cloud, you can do quite a lot, and I'll hope you keep that in mind and give it a try if you do have restrictions on using the cloud in your organization. Thanks very much.
At this time, I'm actually going to turn the controls over to Tim Yarris, and he's going to talk to you about the Civil 3D portion of sharing without the cloud. And while we're switching over, I just wanted to point out that we had Nate talk about InfraWorks 360, and we're about to have Tim talk about Civil 3D. I want to point out that there are tools that allow you to collaborate between the two products. In Civil 3D, we've got the ability to open an InfraWorks 360 model. We can also bring in IMX files, and then you've got kind of the more traditional methods of exchanging data, DWG, shapefile, SDF, XML, those are all there as well. So there are a lot of collaboration capabilities, again, that don't use the cloud between the two products, or with one person using both products to do different parts of a project. So Tim, the floor is yours. Tell us about Civil 3D.
Great, thanks Eric. Can you hear me and see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Great, so thanks everyone. So what I wanted to talk about today was just a few of the ways that we've enhanced Civil 3D 2017 to make it a bit easier for people to do a few things with their projects. So three major topics I wanted to cover were just some ways that you can use Civil 3D 17 to pretty much like organize your Civil 3D projects and share those projects with others. Secondly being just how, like, as a member of a project team, you can then consume data that others have already shared with your project team. And then also, lastly, I just wanted to kind of touch on some ways that you can have a bit more control with 2017 version, just over how you can be notified when something in your project changes. So I'm just going to jump in here. Hopefully I imagine if you've seen some of the materials that we've had out there for like promoting the 2017 version, you may have seen this data set that I have in a couple of the videos and stuff. So it's a simple data set that just shows just like an overall just kind of simple commercial project site and everything. So we got a couple of corridors in here and just a parking lot and that sort of thing. A couple surfaces. You'll see here I've got 3 surfaces, a composite, existing ground and roads, and a whole bunch of alignments here. And so this is quite obviously like a pretty simple project and everything. So, but still, as you see, as you get into it, there are a number of different alignments here that as your list of objects grows in a collection, it gets pretty cumbersome to manage what those objects are and what goes to what. So one of the things that we introduced with the 2017 version is this whole ability to right-click a collection in Prospector and you can create folders. And so in this case here, I'm just going to create a folder. You'll see here I've got I've got a number of alignments here that are just entrances that are just center line and alignments that represent the entrances to this parking lot here. So I'm just going to create a lot entrances folder in my alignments collection here. And then one of the things that we did here to give you some better options for kind of managing your objects. Once you've created that folder, now you can select an object and you can drag it and drop it into the folder. So very similar to the way that, like for example, like Windows Explorer works and that kind of thing. You also can multi-select objects. You can control click, or you can use select, shift select and that sort of thing. That really works with things that are just within the same object collection. So in this case, I'm just going to grab those two and I'm going to drag them both into that folder that I created. If you want to get even more into the weeds, you can create subfolders within them. Use that same right-click menu to rename or delete the folders. And if you delete a folder, you'll be asked whether you want to like either what you want to do when those objects, when you delete a folder. Do you want to just bump all those objects into that parent collection, or do you want to delete the objects altogether? That sort of thing. So in this case, I'm just going to cancel. So anyway, some of the things that you're going to be able to do here, like I'm going to create, like if I want to share some of the objects within this particular drawing, I'm going to create some data shortcuts. And this is the same kind of general functionality that we've had for a number of years in Civil 3D. But one thing you'll notice though is that like at the bottom here we've added this new node for corridor models. So this has been a long-standing request for quite a while from a lot of users. The corridor model has a lot of information in it and everything, and it tends to be pretty complicated and bloat the drawings and everything. So we wanted to give people the ability to actually create a shortcut to a corridor model so that they can then consume that corridor in another drawing and do other things with it. So for the example that I have here, I'm just going to pick my corridor, and as you'll see here, it's already like I've just selected all the corridors in that node. But then you'll see here that I have, you see this notification up here that says when you create a data shortcut to a corridor, data shortcuts are automatically created for all of its baselines. So you'll see here when I pick that corridor node at the bottom, it's automatically going to create data shortcuts for all of the baseline alignments and profiles that make up that corridor model. So it's just grabbing just the centerline alignments and profiles. It is not going to be creating shortcuts to offset or curb return alignments, or I'm sorry, it will create them to curb return alignments because they're used as baselines and like intersections and that sort of thing. But offsets are not needed, and it's also not going to create any sort of shortcuts to the quarter assemblies and that sort of thing, just the baseline alignments and profiles. So just for the sake of this demo, though, I do want to pick my offset alignments, and I'm also going to grab my surfaces. So at this point, I'm just going to click OK, and you'll see here down in my prospector, my data shortcuts project, I have a new project already created for this demo and everything. But you'll see that my quarter model has been created as a shortcut, my surfaces, and then also those alignments and profiles that I wanted to. And something else that you might notice here is that it also, that lot entrances folder that I created in my project, or in my source drawing up here, you'll see, that's that right there. You'll see that that same folder structure that I created was also carried forth into this data shortcut project. So really handy feature there that you can then, that if you can establish a project structure in one drawing, and then that will then cascade into your data shortcuts project. And then some other things you can do after the fact. Let's see here, if I go into my offset alignments. So you see here, just like the other one, it has a number of objects in here. You can then create folders within your data shortcut project. So I'm going to say lot entrance offsets, create it, and then the same thing, you can then grab a number of these alignments and just kind of drag and drop them into a folder, and we'll see what happens with that in a moment when I then go in and reference these. So anyway, now that I've got that all established and everything, now I just want to create a new drawing and just show you how we can use these data shortcuts in a new drawing. So you'll see here, if I go in and I create, one of the other things that we did for the 2017 release is you can use your quarter model or any other data shortcut. You can right-click and create a reference like you have always been able to do. Or one of the other things you can do now is you can then grab it, and just as you were able to drag and drop within your prospector, you can drag it and drop it into the canvas of a drawing. And when I do that, you'll see that we have that same create reference dialog box that has been pretty common for other data shortcuts in Simple 3D. But you'll see here for quarters, it's going to tell you exactly what it's going to create data shortcuts to. So just like you saw when I created the data shortcuts to the quarter, it grabbed all of the baseline alignments and profiles. It's telling you here that when you create a reference to this data shortcut, it's going to create references to all of those objects as well. So I'm going to just click OK, and you'll see up here when it brings that quarter model in, there's again a lot of stuff in there. There's all those alignments and profiles and everything, and that's also recreating the structure of the quarter model. So it takes a moment or two. And once that's completed, one moment please. Great, there we are. So now if I just zoom extents, you'll see my quarter model was brought in. That whole structure of it was brought in and everything. And you'll see as well that all of my, you'll see here that in my quarter node for the project, or for this particular drawing, my roads quarter came in, as well as all of the alignments and profiles that were associated as baselines. And also, as you see, that that whole folder structure was carried forth from the Data Shortcuts project into this new drawing and everything. So good stuff there. You can do some other stuff in here as well, like if I wanted to grab my surfaces and bring them into this drawing, I can just kind of, same thing, shift select those, and I'll just drag and drop those into the drawing. But you'll see here when I created when I drag and drop a number of the same objects into a drawing, it doesn't give you that option of that. It doesn't show that create reference dialog box that we saw when we created the quarter. And the reason that happened is because it's just going to use, when you have a number of different similar objects that you're bringing in all at the same time, it's going to pretty much just use the default style for that object that is defined in the drawing settings. So individual objects, if you drag them in one at a time, it'll let you set name defaults or name and styles and all that kind of stuff. But if you're referencing a number of similar objects all at the same time, it's just going to use a default, so you don't have to map each and every single object that you're referencing. So in this case, yeah, so that's essentially that. And then again, you can, same thing, you can just grab a whole folder of things and drag and drop them into your drawing as well if you're interested in that as well. So, but that is the essentials of all that. So what I want to do now at this point, I want to save this drawing and show you some of the other stuff that we can do here. So I'm just going to save this again just as consumer drawing. And I'm just going to save it within that folder that I have the data shortcut project already created in. So now, I'm just going to take a peek at my notes here. All right, so now that you've got these references in this particular drawing, what can you do with it? So you've got all your surfaces in here, you've got your alignments and profiles, all that kind of good stuff, and you've got your quarters. So what we really are looking for people to do with this, one of the things that we wanted to do is just kind of give people the ability to kind of use these objects now for other workflows downstream. So really good example of this is something like if you've got your quarter model, you've got your existing ground surfaces and stuff like that. What some common things that you want to do? Well, what if you wanted to, like, for example, create like sample lines and that sort of thing? So in this case here, if I just kind of create a sample line somewhere along my quarter and just, I'm just going to create that one, and then now if I wanted to then say I want to create like section views, so I can then create section views of all this kind of stuff, pick it, and then now what I've done is essentially the section views are all can exist in a drawing just using the references of all of these of my quarter model. So I can have my full-blown quarter model in this drawing just as a reference and then do my plan production work in just this one drawing that just contains just a reference to that. So I can keep my design objects and my plans production stuff just in two separate drawings and that sort of thing. And then that downstream stuff also works as well for plenty of other options as well. So for example, if I wanted to extract quarter solids from this reference quarter, I can do that. I can do things such as I can create surfaces from that reference quarter model. I can do things like annotation and all that sort of thing, and that's all stuff that I can do just within just downstream from the quarter model without having to have all of those objects within that same drawing as a quarter model. So really great way for people to break up some of the objects and just manage the way that you kind of spread work across your team, and then also hopefully keep the drawing sizes down, that sort of thing. So, so with any project, of course, as you have a number of users, as I've just been showing here, working on different things. So if I have users working on particular portions of a quarter model, one user might be working on the alignment and profile, and the other one might be working on the surfaces, that sort of thing. What happens when some of those objects change, and like how does that affect like what happens within, like, for example, other drawings that other users are working on? So if one of my colleagues is working on this plan production drawing that shows all of my sections and stuff like that, what happens when something changes within this drawing? So let's just look at a couple different things. I'm going to save this drawing. So I'm going to go back into my original drawing for the site, and I'm just going to make just a kind of a silly change here. What would happen if I change like my one of these alignments did something kind of silly. So I'm just going to just drag this couple PIs around just to get a just pretty obvious change to my corridor. And
Tim, can I jump in with a question?
Absolutely. Please do.
Kelly asked, if you created the corridor model inside the corridor DWG, would it be automatically shortcutted in as well, like the other alignment objects? And then he said, sorry, corridor surface inside the corridor model DWG.
Yes, absolutely it would. So great question. So just getting back to this, so if you see here, like I have this, and please tell me if this isn't answering the question, but I've got a road surface here in this original drawing. And you'll see here that I'm sorry, that's, okay, I think I follow now. So no, the road surface is available to be created as a data shortcut, but it does not automatically create a shortcut to the road surface unless you explicitly tell it that you want it to. So when you create a data shortcut of a corridor model, it's only creating shortcuts automatically for the baseline alignments and profiles. Does that make sense?
I think that answers it. So the answer is that it's not automatic. When you create that surface based on the corridor, you can shortcut it, but it doesn't automatically jump in because the corridor is referenced.
Exactly, that's correct.
We had another question. Does data referencing a corridor object increase the file size?
So does it increase the file size of the consumer drawing?
I would assume it's the drawing that's hosting it. You know, when you pull that corridor object in, does it increase the file size of that DWG?
I believe it does, yeah, just because, I mean, it's bringing all that data in and it's creating a cache of the geometry of the corridor object and the alignments and profiles that are associated with it.
That makes sense.
Okay. Other questions, Eric?
I think that covers it. Well, actually, Kelly had another follow-up question. So he said, so no need to create again. We're referring back to the corridor surface again. No need to create again inside the consumer or host drawing. It can be shortcutted in. So again, that I think, if I understand correctly, if in the corridor drawing where the corridor lives, if you create a surface on top of that corridor, you don't need to go and create it again in the drawing that's referencing that corridor. You can just reference the corridor surface from the source drawing.
Exactly, yeah. And it's a complete option as to like however you want to work. So you can either create the, like in my example here, like this drawing that we're looking at right now is the one that the corridor actually exists in. I can go in and create as many surfaces from this corridor as I want, and if I want to have them, if I want to create shortcuts to those surfaces that I create, I can do that, or I can just come into my consumer drawing and then just has just no surfaces whatsoever created of the corridor yet, and I can then go in and just as you would in the host drawing, you can create as many surfaces from the corridor as you want and have those corridor surfaces just exist natively in this consumer drawing. Make sense?
It does to me. And Kelly's saying okay. One more question from Thorsten about what happens when the path to a referenced shortcut is changed. So I'm assuming he means when maybe the drawing is moved or something along those lines.
That's an excellent question. I'm going to get to that.
Okay. All right.
So any others, or should I just kind of keep
That's it for now. That's it for now.
Great.
On rolling.
Great. And then please let me know if I don't answer that question sufficiently, then please let us know first. Okay. So this is back to that whole idea of what happens like when something changes in the source drawing. So in this example here, I've got my corridor in my consumer drawing, and I went back into my original corridor drawing, and I made a silly change to it and everything just to make it pretty obvious. So I changed my baseline alignment, and now my corridor is kind of jumping all over there and everything. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a I'm just going to save the drawing. We're going to see what happens in here. So now I'm going to go back into my consumer drawing, and you'll see here that we're getting a notification down here that's saying, hey, your data shortcut definitions may have changed. Couple different options of stuff that you can do. You can either close it and ignore it and synchronize it later. You can pick synchronize right here from this particular bubble. You'll see here that there is this new icon that's showing up down on the status bar in Civil 3D. I'll get to a little bit more of what this can do in a moment, but essentially what you're seeing, this bubble here, the default is that any time that one of the referenced objects changes in the source drawing, this bubble is going to show up and give you the opportunity to click the synchronize and consume that change just pretty much as it happens. So I'm going to just kind of wait for this to change and everything, and we'll see what happens and everything. But you'll notice that like every time, you may or may not, if your project is really in a phase where there are a lot of changes happening and everything, you can imagine that there are going to be times that you're not going to want to have this notification show up each and every time that a change is made. So if one of your colleagues is like moving a PI and saving, and then you're going to get that notification. Then they're going to move another PI and save. You're going to get that notification again. There are plenty of cases when that's just going to be kind of annoying. So I'm going to show you in a minute how you can then turn that notification off. Let me say, we're going back in, and it's pretty much going back into that consumer drawing. Okay, there we go. So now you see here that my quarter drawing, my quarter updated to show that goofy change that I made in the source drawing. So at this point, you'll see here that that notification bubble has gone away, and that warning has gone away and everything. But you'll see that there's this, there's still this new option showing up down here at the bottom that says it's just kind of a toggle, just like all the rest of these standard AutoCAD options are. That you can then say, if you want that notification to show up every time something changes, you can leave that as it is, or if you click it, you can then turn that notification off. And you'll see here in the command line it's now telling you that it's off, and it's no longer highlighted in blue. So it just kind of gives you the option there to, if you don't want to be notified each and every time something changes, you can have some control over how that changes. So hopefully that makes sense. Some of the other ways that you can then go ahead and find out when something changes. So for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to hide this quarter model. And actually, you know what? Better still, I'm going to just kind of select my my surfaces, and I'll show you something else that I'm going to go through here. Okay, so I'm going to select those, and now I'm going to isolate those, just so we're just looking at the surfaces, because I'm going to show something else here. So what would happen now, in a lot of cases with objects that we have data shortcuts to, so years ago we introduced this whole notion of if an object is data shortcutted into a consumer drawing, the geometry of the object was cached within that drawing, and so that meant that if your drawing got like renamed or moved in that example that we were just talking about, you didn't get necessarily that notification that you had like when it showed like an empty box and it showed you just like a reference not found. It didn't know what to do. It couldn't find it. That semi-promote notion that we introduced a few releases ago kind of cached the object geometry in the drawing so that if the data shortcut was broken or couldn't be found, you were still able to see the object in your drawing. We didn't use that same kind of concept for surfaces in Civil 3D for a long time, just because surfaces had a tendency to be a bit large and it would increase the size of the drawing and stuff like that, and it was a lot of users just didn't want that caching to happen and everything. So what we did for the 2017 release is we enabled you to have the option to cache that within the drawing, but then we also give you a bit of control over it. So in this case here, so you'll see here that we have, if you pick the surfaces node within the consumer drawing that has shortcuts of a surface, you'll see now that the list view at the bottom here has this data reference status column. And there are a couple different options here, or two different options here. You can either pick whether you want the geometry of the object to be cached within the current drawing, or if you just want it to be just reference only. That's all I want to see, is just I want it to look at the reference each and every time. So I'm going to show you how this works for this particular case. So I'm going to show for the, let's say for the existing ground, that'll be a very obvious, or no, I'll go through for existing ground. Roads, let's say. So if I change roads to reference only, and now I'm going to save that drawing as well, and then at this point I'm going to go into my Windows Explorer here, and just for kicks I'm going to, well, better still, let me close that drawing first. Now I'm going to go into my Windows Explorer and I'm going to rename that source drawing. I'm just going to rename it to X site and everything. And so now what's going to happen if I close that drawing and reopen it? So you'll see a couple things going on here. So first off, you'll see that all of my surfaces are out of date, as you'd expect, because it went and looked for the data shortcuts, couldn't find them, so they're out of date. But you'll see here that I have the geometry of my two of the surfaces are still shown, but you'll notice here that it couldn't find one of the surfaces, so it's giving you that old broken reference to blah 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 because it can't find that source drawing. So it can't find that, but it is at least showing the two other surfaces that we did not have references, or that we did not have set to cache in the drawing. So if you see here, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around a bit, but okay, here we go. So this is that one that we had set is the road surfaces. You can see there's no notion of the road surface here. So if I try to zoom to it, it goes out to that notification and everything. Whereas if I try to zoom to my existing ground, it knows where it is, and it knows what the geometry looks like at least, and it can still find it and everything. So that's just kind of an option as to if you want to, there are a couple different pros and cons over whether you would want to use that surface caching notion. Couple things that are going on there. So caching the surface geometry within the consumer drawing, it increases the drawing size because the geometry is in there, but it does reduce the time that it takes for the drawing to open, just because it's not looking back into the source drawing of the surface, and it's not pulling all that data back into the drawing, and so it increases the drawing open time dramatically. But it also caching the drawing, caching the surface within the drawing, one of the other benefits of that is that if you then share this drawing with another user who might not have access to the data shortcut surfaces, the consumer of the drawing will still see the geometry of the surface and everything. They'll still get these out-of-date icons because it's not getting the most up-to-date surface and everything, but it's at least giving the consumer of this drawing just the geometry of the surface as it was when it last looked at that data shortcut reference and everything. So hopefully that explains what's going on. And that's the essentials of what I wanted to cover. Eric, I'm not sure. I would expect that there are some other questions that may have popped up in that whole.
Yeah, there are a few. I'll kind of work backwards. Great. One asked whether you can remap to the new drawing without issues. So like you rename that drawing to X site. Can you refine that drawing?
Yep. So this is actually goes back to one of the tools that we introduced for the 2016 release of Civil 3D. So we have this new Manage Data Shortcuts tool on the Manage tab, and what this is going to let you do is it gives you this kind of dialog box here that gives you on one side of it gives you a window as to like what exists in the drawing itself, and then this side here gives you an idea of what's in the data shortcuts project that the drawing is associated with. So you see here, like I have this out of date icon here for that road surface that I was looking at. You can then go into this drawing here, and you can, or into this side here, you can say, I know what the drawing that I want to look for. I can then go in here and I can say, this drawing is actually in, where the heck was it? This one. I can say, now I know it's in X site. For some reason, it's not letting me fix that. Oh, yeah. Probably because it's open. But anyway, you get the idea that you can then say, I want this object to be mapped to this road object in that drawing. Click OK, and then it will fix that reference for you.
Okay. We're getting some kind of flickering effect with that dialog, so that's you may want to close that down.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there something that is similar to like an XREF bind for data shortcuts? Thorsten asked that question.
Okay. You know, there is. It's been a while since I've had to package.
I'm thinking promote, right? Can you right-click and promote?
Yeah, and you can actually then do the same thing. You can, like, there's in that same Manage tab, like it's kind of below the fold here, but there is this promote all data references option, and that's basically going to say it's going to just kind of just take all of these shortcuts that are in here and make them like real objects within this current drawing, and it won't be looking back into, it breaks the link to the data shortcut, like the original drawing, but then the drawing at least, they exist in here. So
right, and you can also right-click those individual objects in Prospector, and there should be a promote option in the shortcut menu as well. That's
correct. Yes.
If the references weren't broken, right now you can't do it because the references are broken.
Exactly. Yep, you're right.
Okay. This one is from a little further back from Kelly. What happens in the source drawing when the folder structure is modified in the shortcuts listing? Does it update automatically, or do you have to close and reopen?
You know, that's a great question. So I think if I understand correctly, the question is if I were to, like, in the project or in the drawing itself, change the folder structure. But I think in either case,
Kelly says project.
Project. Okay. So my understanding is that pretty much it's the folder structure is like a one-shot deal where it's like when you create a data shortcut, like if you drag this lot entrances folder into the consumer drawing, that's just kind of like a representation of what that structure was at the time that it was created. Let me think about that. Does that seem to answer the question, or is there more to it than what I started spouting off about?
Kelly says not really, but maybe we can follow up after the webcast because we are about out of time. I believe I have Kelly's email address, so I'll share that with you.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I'm actually going to switch the controls back to me momentarily and just remind everybody. One second here. Just remind everybody about our upcoming webcast on August 3rd. Here we'll deal with style customization for both InfraWorks 360 and Civil 3D. Tim will be back to talk about Civil 3D, and I think our first-time presenter, Heiko, will be handling the InfraWorks 360 style customization topic. So I'm really looking forward to that. I know it's a topic that a lot of people are very interested in, so I hope we have a huge turnout. Thanks again for all of you giving up an hour of your day to spend with us talking about collaboration. Thanks to our two presenters, Tim and Nate. I know you didn't get to hear Nate live, but he was in the background checking out questions and answering some of them. With that, have a great day.